I want to give thanks for life. You want to love black people. I'm going to say, you're the provider, Selassie, the Almighty. Joe! Rastafari live on the man in the heart of our flesh. Kalonji, get the place of fire, rises high. Open the eyes, you better be wise. You never know, get the place of fire, rises high. Yo, for the good, you show you.
Alright, so give thanks. This is episode number 2 of Catcha Fyah. You would have seen Kirk Edwards in the first episode. We hope and know that you would have already logged on to the internet. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Catcha Fyah. You can also send us any information you want, suggestions, comments, things that you think we need to discuss on any of the programs at catchafire3@gmail.com. You can find us there as well, or on any of the platforms on the internet. Coming up on this episode, we have a special guest. Many of you know him as the Art Animal. Ras Akyhem, some person who's dedicated a lot of his time to art, to the culture arts industries in Barbados. So he has a lot to say. We want to get into his brain, find out what's been going on with him as well. He's been through a tough time, lost his art recently. You would have heard about that on Facebook. So a one-on-one exclusive interview with Ras Akyhem when we come back. Episode number 2, Catcha Fyah.
We're blessed with the powers of ever-living love, ever-living life. Hotter flames, bugging a Kente.
It's a blessing
To the world.
Giving thanks and praises itinerally,
What you say?
growing mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Alright.
It's a burning fire.
Yeah, me now. The blessing we have, with that would give us strength. Remember, we are the people who just sent to heal the earth and make it a better place. Elevate yourself out of the rat race.
The lessons we will learn, the message we will bring. Keep the spirit of the people so alive in everything, and we'll survive unified. That's the only way. You feel the vibes every time when the music plays.
Evilous people are conspiring to get us, doing all the favors, earning our trust with an ulterior motive for us. Them a free and new material want turn you in a dust. I know we can't up and don't know who to trust. The love we used to have done in a fight and fuss. Some dying for money cause them love it so much. Can't make we ambition what we have done in a grudge. No, no. The blessing we have, with that would give us strength. Remember, we are the people who just sent to heal the earth and make it a better place.
Do that.
Elevate yourself out of the rat race.
The lessons we will learn, the message we will bring. Keep the spirit of the people so alive in everything, and
You know what,
we'll
Flames?
survive unified. That's the only way. You feel the vibes every time.
Alright.
So tell them to play this. Bust it, make the people them hear this. Cause we need more confidence and self-awareness.
Yeah.
Our time is now and them can't delay this. True, we bust it for the warrior, them the youth and the ladies. Them still I wonder how we so courageous. Won't be overpowered by the spiritual rapists. Them can't manipulate this for the Lexus or Mercedes. Cause Jah reveal the truth unto the suckling and the babies.
The blessing we have, with that would give us strength.
Yep.
Remember, we are the people who just sent to heal the earth and make it a better place.
Know that.
Elevate yourself out of the rat
The
race.
lessons we will learn, the message we will bring. Keep the spirit of the people so alive in everything, and we'll survive unified. That's the only way. You feel the vibes every time when the music
be
plays.
crazy, lazy, still them pay me daily to come fight them wars and look after them safety. No buts nor maybe, it's a mental slavery. Like we need another Selassie to save
Well,
me.
buggy enough for them literally losing them life in war. I and I lyrically using the mic in war. Kings and warriors, that's what them call me lion bar. If you feel me, push up your hand, give me the lion bar.
The blessing we have, with that would give us strength. Remember, we are the people who just sent to heal the earth and make it a better place.
Know that.
Elevate yourself out of the
alive in our thing, and we'll survive unified. That's the only way.
All right, this is episode number 2. Kim, it's a pleasure to have you. I hope I did justice to your title in my introduction. Welcome to the program.
Give thanks. Bless up.
Update me. What's been happening with the animal? Everybody knows you as that. How you get that name, first of all?
I acquired the name Our Animal while I was studying in Jamaica because I had a habit of returning to the studio after the studying during the day after we finished. And the Manly shut down, college shut down. A handful of us would return to the studio to work through the night, you know, and it is really reflective of my tenacity, my passion for the creative process. So while a lot of the other students were like party animals, they used to call me the art animal because that passion I had for the creative process. You know? Okay.
All right, I want you to put this in perspective for me because if somebody asks you your profession, obviously you say to them, well, you're an artist.
Yeah.
That may sound strange to some people, saying that as a profession here in the Caribbean, here in Barbados.
Yeah.
Take me back, tell me about the year. How was it for you, challenging, to go and make art your profession? How was that? Give me the year so that the viewers can actually understand the year we're talking and put things in perspective for me.
Actually, you know, like, from I was really young, right, I had a sense. Because I was drawing from the time I can hold a pencil, I was drawing. I can recall drawing on the sides at my mother's house, you know, and being scolded for that, right? So I always had an aptitude for copying things around me, right? That was my language. My language was always really visual, initially, right? And the love for the drawn image seduced me really early in life, because when I was about 9 years old, because of my early love for copying cartoons from the newspaper and stuff like that, my uncle joined me in the library, you know, and I also love reading. You know, I used to do a lot of reading very young, and my uncle for my 9th birthday joined me in the Barbados Public Library, and immediately I went into the under 10 section because I wasn't, you know. There was the under 10 and then the over 10 and over, right, which is the adult library. And so I went into the under 10 library, and immediately the first books I bought from there was a book on Picasso and one on the Renaissance painters, right? And the book on Picasso that I borrowed, I never really took back to the library. You know, I sort of captured it, and I held it hostage until I was about 16 or 17 years old. I actually used to sleep with this book under my pillow, you know, and it was like, for me, it was my sort of source, my reference, you know. I sort of like, through a process of osmosis, literally, sort of became Picasso in my consciousness, you know, in the sense that I understood how to reinvent reality, you know, how to develop a vision that perceive things outside of their objective value, right? And very early I started deconstructing form, you know, even though I wasn't really conscious. I was in a state of how would I put that? I was in a state of unconscious awareness. You know what I mean? Right? That somehow inside I was aware, subconsciously I had this sense, right? But on the conscious level, you know, I really wasn't doing it in any through any rational process. You understand? It was totally intuitive, you know.
All right. Your paintings. Some people say that your paintings are graphic. So what I'm trying to get from you, Akyem, is to take me what was happening in Barbados at that time that would have inspired what it is that you were trying to express on canvas.
First of all, I would need to have defined what constitute graphic for people. In other words, if they're talking about the use of the linear elements in the work, right? Because I use a lot of graphic media too, I paint and draw simultaneously, you know. And or if they mean in terms of the graphic and explicit content of the work, you know. My work is sort of challenging, right? It is visually challenging, and in terms of how the elements are orchestrated, how I compose a surface, right? My peculiar aesthetic, you know, almost deliberately upward. Even though I was trained as a classical painter and I can do that, but in my work, I seek to retain the savage, right? The type of refinement that exists in the European approach to painting, it didn't suit my temperament as an African in this hostile desperate space, you know. So because of my cultural orientation, how I was informed by my environment, because don't forget, I come from the same environment as Gabby and the Opels and, you know, a lot of incredible people, you know, Chapman Lane, New Orleans, Kensington Road, right? That's the womb space, you know, that get evidence to me, right? So essential to my nature is a sense of struggle, right? A sense of constantly having to redefine myself, to find meaning and purpose, right? Because we that come from the underbelly of that society, that aspect of society, that what they call a ghetto space, right? We got to be 10 times as good as everybody else, you know, and we always got to constantly be refining our nature in order to fit in, right? And at a stage in my development, and it's through my art, especially because of the journey through the visual space, right? Trying to navigate that visual space, trying to navigate that space in my psyche, right? I came to the realization that, you know, like, essential to my nature is this idea of directness and honesty, you know, and I need to retain, and in my work, I need to retain that a sovereignty over that, right? I need to give and sustain the savage, and by the savage I mean that primal energy, right? That give me, that birthed me, right into that space, knowing that I would survive it, you know, and the lessons that I learned in that space, right? So retaining the savage is important to me, right? And again, let me say again, for those who might misinterpret the term, right? I'm using it in the poetic sense, in its poetic sense, right? And I'm using it to address that primal energy, right? That informs my work. Right? And that's what challenged a lot of people in my work too. Right.
Did your approach change? You went to Cuba. You've done some work in Cuba at an institute. Talk to me about your experience in Cuba. How that would have helped you to develop as an artist.
Okay. Cuba was a truly important experience. Firstly, as a human being, right? As someone who had experienced struggle in a third world environment, right, in a third world context, and going to Cuba, having lived in a democratic society, inverted commas, right, that speak to Cuba and other socialist experiments, right, as something negative, right, and anti-developmental, right. I experienced a shock in that, yes, there was the evidence of blatant and outright poverty. I mean, like, you know, there was the evidence of human hardship, you know, deprivation, right? But there was also evidence of the supreme ascension of the human spirit, right? There was the beauty of the human heart, you know. La Corazón de Cubano is It's beautiful.
You saw a different appreciation for art itself in Cuba?
Yes, but my appreciation for art in Cuba was really the art of life itself. The art of survival, right? The art of resistance, right? The art of how to imagine and reinvent yourself, right? In hostile and alien circumstances. Now, the impact on my work.
More so the receptivity.
Well, first of all, my work was really different in Cuba, and myself and Ras Akyhem-I, because it was two of us who went to Cuba, right? And what I found in Cuba, the thing for me in Cuba that was a real setback was the fact that despite the revolutionary philosophy, right, that gave birth to this state, right, the visionary ideas of the artists were very much in the traditions of Russia. I guess that was a consequence of the embargoes that were imposed on them, that changed their destiny and the direction, right? That they had to look to Russia for support because it was one of the main states in China that shared a certain philosophical posture, right? And a certain political ideology, right? So obviously they were kindred spirits, right, in terms of the ideology.
Cardinal sin, communism.
Right, and that's how it was perceived, right, by the West, right? So the propaganda machine had done its work, right, on a lot of people in the West. So when I went to Cuba, ironically, despite the whole idea of revolution and transformation and all that, I still saw a very conservative, traditional influence that was impacting the Cuban psyche, right? And it resonated with a lot of the retentions that the society kept from their relationship with Russia, right? And I thought that a lot of the art, especially the official art, was really sterile, right? It wasn't inventive, right? It wasn't challenging or interrogating, the society itself. But again, I still got to look on it in the context of that reality, right? That type of expression had consequences, and in Cuba, like in Barbados, you can be dead right.
Or
you know what I mean, right? So, so a lot of people, a lot of the staff was careful, right? Now, to circumvent that situation, right? The artists who were truly inventive, right, moved away from objective realism and photorealism, which was the domineering sort of illustrative, art that sort of that was embedded with the revolution and embedded with the vision of the revolution, right? But the society was changing, right? The world was changing, right? And a younger generation of artists in Cuba were beginning to question the society because a lot of things were still stagnant, right? Despite the changes and the dynamics of the world outside of Cuba, right? And there were still a lot of restrictions that denied Cubans access to information, that can change that can affect their thinking, right? Impact their thinking. In whatever way, I'm not going to judge that, but obviously,
you find similar restrictions in Barbados?
In more subtle ways. Right, not as overt as in Cuba.
But
because in Cuba you can get arrested for having...
Hold a minute. I can get you to expand on that. We can catch a music video and come back in a few seconds.
Cool.
I really do, but yeah. This is Keznamdi alongside Kelly Fyah. Chronics. Sing fence, yo.
This is
I
a
want them, yo.
In the Gideon, there's a trillion barriers in my way. This is a Gideon, lion heart is strong. Highly I guide way. In the Gideon, there's a trillion barriers in my way. This is a Gideon, I have no fear of man. Highly I guide way. It's a spiritual battle, they're moving through like cattle. Coming my way in herds, I'm ready for the tackle. They try to chain and shackle, but all them are hackle me. I foresee what them are pre, the enemy. You have to watch, they come to catch you, snatch your soul. It's a fact, aware of that, the rats are racing for control. I max out the cats that deserve a chop, behold. Babylon a scheme and a plot, but we stay strapped up in the Gideon. There's a trillion warriors in my way. This is a Gideon, lion heart is strong. Highly I guide way. In the Gideon, there's a trillion warriors in my way. This is a Gideon, I have no fear of man, cause highly I guide way. It's Namdi.
I got some problems that keep me up like coffee. Near-death experience where I nearly see my coffin. Permanent screw, I don't smile that often. Warrior not the Gideon, just call me a Spartan. This dimension I pass through, I'm stuck at the crossroads, but I'm not a lost soul, I'm just building my castle. Just call me a tadpole, cause I'm learning as I grow. Still I see me follow, keep it straight as an arrow. Strictly roots, music I produce, not the media that them calling music. Get me like that liquid in the blood, that's similar to the color of orange juice. No excuse for power abuse. And this is just a problem that I see over and over. I'm a soldier, soul searcher, soul rebel, my soul, my nurture, my soul console, balance and level.
In the Gideon, there's a trillion barriers in my way. This is a Gideon, lion heart is strong. Highly I guide way. In the Gideon, there's a trillion barriers in my way. This is a Gideon, I have no fear of man, cause highly I guide way.
Animal, it's always good to have you, Akyem. Where do we go from here now? As far as your work is concerned, most of the people on Facebook would have seen or heard from you recently pertaining to some of your work that would have been lost. So that is gone. How do you pick up the pieces now and move on?
Okay, well, I'm in a kind of introspective place at this time. I trying to figure out, so I try to determine what something like this could mean, right, in the scheme of things for me. And if it's a part of letting go, because recently too I've been divesting myself of a lot of stuff, right? I've been trying to make my life more minimalist in terms of the things that I sort of maintain around me, because I find like the collection of things, right, bring a lot of responsibilities that don't give you time to really spend on the self. They displace, right, a lot of the self-focus. And I don't mean in a narcissistic kind of way, right? I just mean in terms of that constant introspective reflection, right? Self-analysis, you know, trying to always redefine and redirect, right? So I trying to rationalize it in a totally different way, trying to think of it as part of that process, part of the whole idea of letting go, the idea of detachment, you know, which is a very difficult thing for human beings to do, you know, because we define ourselves and our achievements and stuff by the things that we acquire, right? We use them as demarcations, right, to define where we are in our existence, right? And we associate it with development, right, at a certain level, right? And I find like I trying to find ways around that to redefine these notions, right? So I'm trying to put it in that type of context, you know. Maybe it's my way of, people might call it denial, right? But it's a way also of sort of keeping a sobriety, a level of sobriety, right, about my purpose, right? Because the actual work still exists in reality, right? And these were the images of the works, right? So in a sense, they are phantoms in essence, right? And I'm the author. So that energy lives with me, right? and it can be redefined and redirected in all kinds of different ways and manipulated, and right, because that's what my work is about. My work is about responding constantly to the transformations, trying to, well, let me put it in a more concise way. It is a way of trying to navigate or map, you know, my own psyche, right? My own imagination, you know, my that territory, right? My mind space.
It was out of time a while ago, so this is really my final question to you. Throughout the interview, you mentioned words like energy, going into your own space, finding yourself, expression, and so on. So there's that side of you that I know, the spiritual side, as opposed to a religious side where you may be identified as a Rasta or so on. I want you to talk to me, or close out this interview by talking to our viewers about that side of you, the spiritual side, spiritual cultivation. I don't know, however you want to put it. But we always want to make sure we leave a conscious bit with our viewers.
Yeah. Sometimes it's pretty complicated, right, to talk about that ethereal space, because like it's an ethereal space. It is to find an adequate metaphors, right, to transmit these ideas, because people talk about people sort of people have a habit of quoting or you know, quoting from what they call divine books, divine authorities, right, or memorizing, right, and regurgitating, and they think like by doing that somehow they're expressing a level of knowledge or wisdom. But I've come to a place where when I read a book or have a conversation, it is really information I'm collecting, right? Not knowledge, right? Knowledge is really the realization of this thing within the self, right? It is becoming it, right? When you become it, there's no distinction between you and that thing, right? And that is the place I'm attempting to arrive at. You know, I perceive it, right? I sense this place, right? But I truly, like most people do, I cannot honestly claim it. You understand? I think the whole idea of the God self, right? And I reference it as the God self because it is that part of the self that has invented the idea of this idea of God, right? I think the idea of God is something that has been configured and dreamt by man. God, in other words, the idea of this divine entity, right? Which I really see as energy in all different manifestations, all forms of manifestations, right? But people like to put some kind of personality or image onto it because that's the compulsion that human beings have in order to bring it into their space, into a space in which they can make interpretations and find meaning, right? Rather than ascend to this place where you lose the plane that is rational, right? Because like and I discovered this through the act of painting, through the act of making things, right? That you know, like there is this way that you transcend into this space where linear logic loses its meaning. It doesn't apply anymore, right? You reach a point in consciousness, right? Through the conduit of the work, of course, right? When I work, that's what I call the work a kind of ritual space, or right? Because it takes me into these spaces where I come to these realizations, right? And this one, for me, it is very critical because I've been able to arrive at meaning without the burden of linear logic, right? I've been able to circumvent the logic structures and systems that people use to communicate, right? And arrive at something, at a place or at a conclusion that is valid, right? And that has meaning and substance, right? But I've done it without going through that logic system, right? I've crossed chasms of thought, right? You know, and I like that process, you know. I guess psychedelic substances do it to people too, right? It's a way, I think that if a human being has never had, any human being that has never had a psychedelic experience has not truly lived, right? And doesn't have access and has a deficit, right, of experience when it comes to being a complete human being, right? A complete magical being, right? And when I work, I become that type of a being, you know. I transcend into a space that is peculiar to people. You know, people who see me at work observe that, you know, that it is almost ritual. I become a shaman in the process. Even some of my friends also call me the shaman, the blue shaman, right? Because, well, that comes from way back too, you know, because my early experience delving into yoga, you know, Buddhism, and I always like the alternative paths, right? The path that is least traveled, right? And that require you to encounter, to find magical ways, right? Magical solutions to situations that you always gotta be analyzing and redefining and even inventing.
All right. I know some viewers are going to be angry that we didn't put this as the main issue, because it's such a broad subject and probably one of the more necessary subjects we need to be discussing right now. But this is just episode number 2. We guarantee our viewers that we're going to get deeper as time goes on. Akyem, what do you say to your friends? Like I said, this is being uploaded online. Yeah. So
yeah,
not just talking to Barbadians.
Yeah, to my entire Facebook family, you know, and I got friends all over the globe, you know, who connect with me, who, you know, check up on my page, you know, follow my ratings, my ideas, my work, you know. I just want to say big thumbs up. You don't know, real thing. Ras Akyhem.
Respect. Yeah. Give thanks for coming, Akyem.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do it again. Real
big
thing.
love, man.
Yeah, man.
Respect.
It's a jungle out there, and life is unfair for the ones left to scrape for the scraps. Generations have grown in the same situation. Tribal warfare, chattel slavery, and now taxes. The people never have enough, and children are born fatherless, and families have no one to rely on. So from blood, sweat, and tears, the solution appears. The pride needs defending by a lion. Will you be the one? Oh, for the mountains and valleys are the city streets. Will you be the one? To keep moving forward and never retreat in this jungle out there with so many limitations set intentionally just for us to fail. With your plans in motion and standing in your power and strength from your lioness, you're bound to prevail. The vision is for those who can endure and won't stand for injustice and oppression no more. And the journey is for everyone to share. When the lions are leading, there is nothing to fear. Will you be the one? Oh, for the mountains and valleys are the city streets. Will you be the one to keep moving forward and never retreat? A future for the youth must be priority.
So that's it for another program, episode number 2. We still got tons of nerves to get rid of here, so like I said, just bear with us. We're not begging anyone to take us seriously. We're just bringing the information to you. We're providing a platform for anybody who has, I suppose, any issues to discuss. And an issue could be negative or positive as far as I'm concerned. So big respect to everybody who's been part of the program so far. Kirk Edwards in episode number 1. We just heard from Ras Akyhem. I hope you enjoyed the videos. That's it. Catcha Fyah number 2. We look forward to seeing you in episode number 3. We have a big surprise for you again.
I'm gonna say give thanks for life. You want love black people. I'm gonna say you're the provider last year, the Almighty Eye. Joe! Ras Akyhem-I live on the meaning of the heart of all flesh. Kalonji, boom, get the place of fire.